3 weeks
It
earlier,
hurts bad.
Santa Fe, New
I know.
Mexico territory.
We need to stop the
The
bleeding.
screaming started at half
Come on,
past
we have to
11.
get up.
This
Josephine
locket is
Tran
the
pressed
key.
herself
You
against
must
the
believe me.
pantry wall,
I don't understand.
her
How can
heart
this help?
slamming against
holds
her
the
ribs
truth.
like a trapped bird.
Tell me where it is,
She had
or I'll
come through the
shoot.
servant's
You'll have to
entrance,
kill me
as she
first.
always did, carrying a small leather satchel of foxglove
I stand
tincture
before you
for the
scarred but not
governor's
broken.
wife.
You
A
hear the
routine errand
truth,
from the
and you
convent,
will answer.
nothing more. Now she crouched in darkness, watching murder unfold through a crack in the door. "You think you can just throw me away?" A man's voice, young, trembling with rage. 30 years and now you want to claim me now that it's convenient." Governor James Whitmore stood in his study, hands raised. Blood already darkened his white shirt, a wound in his shoulder. Behind him, his wife Margaret clutched the fireplace mantle, her face pale as bone. "Cole, listen to me." "No." The young man, Cole, raised his pistol again. "You don't get to talk anymore. You had 30 years to talk. 30 years to acknowledge your own son." Josie's breath caught. "Son. I was going to," the governor said, his voice desperate now. "That's why I called you here. The announcement is written. Tomorrow the whole territory would know. Tomorrow," Cole laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Tomorrow I become the governor's bastard, the half-breed son he kept hidden like dirty laundry. And my brothers," he gestured to two men flanking the doorway. "What happens to them, to everything we've built? I'll provide for all of you. There's money, land, the will has been changed." "The will?" Cole's voice dropped to something cold. "You mean the will that only matters if you're dead?" The gunshot was deafening. Governor Whitmore crumpled. Margaret screamed, a high, terrible sound that cut off abruptly when the second man, the one with the scarred face, moved toward her. Josie clamped both hands over her mouth. "Don't make a sound. Don't breathe. Don't exist." Her father's last words echoed in her skull, rising from a grave 18 years old. "Hi, Josephine. Don't make a sound. Whatever happens, don't make a sound." She had obeyed then. She had survived. She would obey now. Through the crack, she watched Cole Harden kneel beside the governor's body. The third man, younger, softer-faced, stood frozen near the window, his gun still holstered. "Emmett," Cole's voice was sharp, "stop standing there like a fool. Cole, this wasn't you said we were just going to talk. Plans change." Cole rose, wiping his hands on his trousers. "Virgil, check the rest of the house. Make sure we're alone." The scarred man, Virgil, nodded and moved toward the hallway, toward the pantry. Josie pressed deeper into the shadows. A broom handle dug into her spine. She could smell flour, dried herbs, the copper tang of distant blood. Virgil's boots stopped outside the door. She held her breath until her lungs burned. 1 second, 2, 5. Then the boots moved on. "No one else," Virgil called back. "Servants must have the night off." "Good." Cole struck a match. The small flame illuminated his face, handsome, sharp-featured, with eyes that held something broken. "Burn it, all of it. A tragic accident. Lamp knocked over in the study. The bodies will be unrecognizable. That's the point." Smoke began to curl under the pantry door within minutes. Josie's eyes watered. Her throat seized. Still she did not move, not until she heard the horses gallop away, not until flames began licking through the walls, not until staying meant certain death. She ran, out through the servant's door, across the garden, through the wrought iron gate. She ran until Santa Fe was aglow on the horizon, until her lungs screamed and her legs buckled, until dawn found her collapsed at the gates of San Miguel Convent, 70 miles away, with no voice left to explain what she had seen. Not that she would have used it anyway. Josephine Tran had not spoken a word in 18 years, and she had no intention of starting now. Chapter 2. The Convent of Lost Souls. Present day. San Miguel Convent, New Mexico Territory. Autumn 1878. Josie woke with a gasp, her shift soaked with sweat. The nightmare clung to her like cobweb smoke and screaming and the wet sound of a body hitting the floor. She sat up in her narrow cot, pressing her palms against her eyes until she saw stars instead of blood. 3 weeks, 21 days since that night, and still she could not escape it. Dawnlight crept through the small window of her cell, painting the adobe walls the color of old gold. Outside, a bell began to toll the call to morning prayers. Familiar, routine, safe. She rose and dressed mechanically, the simple gray habit, the white wimple, the leather sandals worn thin from years of use. Her movements were practiced, efficient, and utterly silent. Silence had become her native language. The convent of San Miguel sat in the high desert like a forgotten prayer. Adobe walls 2 feet thick built a century ago by Spanish missionaries who had carved crosses into a land that already had its own gods. The Sangre de Cristo Mountains rose to the east, their peaks brushed with early snow. To the west, nothing but scrubland and sky stretching toward a horizon that never seemed to arrive. It was the last stop before nowhere, the final refuge for those the world had given up on. Josie had come here at 16, mute and orphaned and carrying a grief too heavy for her small frame. The sisters had asked no questions. They had simply opened their arms and let her stay. Now she moved through the courtyard toward the garden, passing the chapel where morning prayers would soon begin. She would not join them. She never did. What was the point of prayers you could not speak aloud? Instead, she walked among the herbs and vegetables she had cultivated for years. The foxglove and yarrow, the say and chamomile, the sturdy rows of squash and beans that fed the convent through winter. Plants did not require conversation. They asked only for water and sunlight and patient hands. She was kneeling in the dirt, thinning the late-season carrots, when the shadow fell across her. "Good morning, Sister Josephine." Mother Superior Elena Vasquez stood at the garden's edge, her weathered face soft with concern. At 67, she moved with the careful grace of a woman who had learned that haste served no one. Josie looked up and nodded a greeting, an acknowledgement wrapped into a single gesture. "You did not come to prayers yesterday," Mother Superior said, "or the day before." Josie's hand stilled on the carrots. She did not meet Elena's eyes. "I worry about you, child." The older woman's voice was gentle. "But it can only help if you let it." Silence stretched between them, filled only by the whisper of wind through the herbs and the distant tolling of the chapel bell. Finally, Mother Superior rose. "When you are ready to share your burden, I will be here to help you bear it." She walked away, leaving Josie alone with the carrots and the sun, and a secret that grew heavier with each passing day. On the other side of the convent, in a small room that smelled of medicine and approaching death, Colonel Thomas McAllister was having an argument with God. "You could have taken me at Antietam," he growled at the crucifix on the wall. "Shiloh, Gettysburg, any of 100 battles where better men than me died screaming." He broke into a fit of coughing, each hack rattling his lungs like stones in an empty jar. When he pulled the handkerchief from his lips, it was spotted with red. "But no, you let me live. Let me give orders that burned villages. Let me watch my men do things I still see every time I close my eyes." He wadded the handkerchief in his fist. "And now you give me this." The crucifix offered no response. Tom leaned back against his pillows, exhausted by the brief tirade. 61 years old, and he looked 80. The cancer was eating him from the inside out, consuming lung tissue the way fire consumed dry brush. Doctor had given him weeks, maybe a month if he was lucky. He did not feel lucky. A knock at the door interrupted his theological dispute. "Go away," he barked. The door opened anyway. Sister Agnes entered, carrying a tray with bread broth and a small bottle of brown liquid. "Your breakfast, Colonel, and your medicine." "I told you I don't want—" "And I told you that I have been a nurse for 30 years and have never yet lost a patient to stubbornness alone. Eat, drink, complain all you like, but do it after." Despite himself, Tom felt the corner of his mouth twitch. Sister Agnes was 55, built like a grain silo, and possessed the kind of immovable will that could redirect rivers. "You're a tyrant," he muttered, accepting the tray. "I've been called worse, by better men." She adjusted his pillows with efficient hands. "Father Miguel wants to know if you'd like to confess today." "Tell Father Miguel that my confession would take longer than I have left to live." "I'll tell him you said tomorrow then." She left before he could argue further. Tom stared at the broth. He was not hungry, had not been truly hungry in months, but he lifted the spoon anyway. Survival was a habit even when survival seemed pointless. As he ate, his eyes drifted to the window. The convent courtyard spread below, baked ochre in the morning light. A few sisters moved between buildings, their habits rippling in the breeze. And there in the garden, a solitary figure knelt among the plants. The silent one. Sister Josephine. Tom had noticed her on his first day at the convent 3 weeks ago. Hard not to notice someone so committed to invisibility. She moved through the world like a ghost, eyes always down, shoulders always hunched, as if she was trying to fold herself small enough to disappear entirely. He had seen that posture before, in soldiers who had witnessed things beyond endurance, in prisoners who had forgotten they were human. The posture of someone who had learned that existence itself was dangerous. What are you running from, he wondered. What broke you so badly that silence feels like safety? He did not expect to ever learn the answer. In a few weeks he would be dead, and whatever secrets Sister Josephine carried would remain her own. But as he watched her pull carrots in the morning sun, something stirred in his chest. Not attraction, he was far past such things, but a strange sense of recognition. We are the same, he thought. Both of us trying to disappear. Both of us waiting to die. He turned back to his broth and tried not to think about it. Through the herbarium window, she could see the main courtyard, where Sister Maria was hanging laundry, and Father Miguel was speaking with one of the older patients, a man named Martinez, who walked with a cane and complained constantly about the food. As she watched Martinez's caregiver, a thick-armed woman named Clara, grabbed the old man's elbow, too roughly yanking him toward the dormitory. Martinez winced. His mouth opened in what might have been a protest, but Clara just pulled harder. Josie's hands tightened on the mortar. She should do something, say something, write a note to Mother Superior about Clara's treatment. But the thought of drawing attention to herself, of inviting questions, of stepping outside the invisible boundaries of her carefully constructed silence. She turned back to the yarrow. Resume grinding. Not your concern, not your business. Stay invisible. Stay safe. The mantras of 18 years of survival. Sister Agnes appeared in the doorway. Josephine, I need you to take medicine to Colonel McAllister in room 7, his afternoon dose. Josie looked up, a flicker of panic crossing her features before she schooled them back to blankness. I know you don't like interacting with patients. Agnes continued, reading the hesitation correctly. But I have 3 people needing bandages changed, and Father Miguel has been asking me to look at his bad knee for a week now. It will only take a moment. Just leave the medicine and go. A long pause. Then Josie nodded, setting aside the mortar. She gathered the small brown bottle and a cup of water onto a wooden tray. Her footsteps made no sound as she walked the corridor toward room 7. Years of practice had taught her how to move like a shadow. The door was ajar. She nudged it open with her shoulder. Colonel McAllister sat propped against pillows, a letter and pen resting on a board across his lap. He looked up at her entrance and their eyes met. For a moment, neither moved. He looked terrible, skin, sallow cheeks, hollow, a tremor in his hands that spoke of weakness he was trying to hide. But his eyes were sharp, too sharp. The eyes of a man who had spent a lifetime reading soldiers, assessing threats, seeing past surfaces to the truth beneath. Josie dropped her gaze immediately. She moved to the bedside table, set down the tray, turned to leave. Wait. The words stopped her like a hand on her shoulder. Please, he added softer. Just wait a moment. She stood frozen, facing the door. Every instinct screamed at her to keep walking, to preserve the safe distance she maintained from everyone. I know you don't talk, McAllister said behind her. The sisters told me. They say you haven't spoken in years. Some kind of trauma, they think. Her shoulders tensed. I'm not asking you to talk. I'm just asking you to stay. Sit if you want. I've been lying in this room for 3 weeks now, and I'm so tired of the sound of my own breathing. She should leave. She always left. It was the pattern, the routine, the safety. But something in his voice, the exhaustion, the loneliness, the raw honesty made her hesitate. Slowly, without meeting his eyes, Josie turned. She moved to the chair by the window, as far from his bed as the small room allowed, and sat. Silence settled between them. Not the awkward silence of strangers with nothing to say, but something deeper, fuller. The silence of 2 people who had both learned that words were overrated. McAllister let out a long breath. Thank you, he said quietly. You don't know what a gift it is. Silence without expectations. Everyone else who comes in here wants something, wants me to eat, wants me to confess, wants me to pretend I'm not dying. He coughed, a wet rattle in his chest. You just sit. That's all I need right now, just someone who sits. Josie remained motionless, her hands folded in her lap. I'm going to keep talking, he continued, because I'm an old man and old men ramble. But you don't have to respond. Don't even have to listen. Just be here. He stared at the ceiling, for a long moment. I was a colonel in the Union Army, Civil War. I commanded 3,000 men, and I sent most of them to die. Another cough. Not in battle, well, some in battle, but the others, I gave orders, you see. Orders that seemed necessary at the time. Sherman's March. Total war. Burn everything, leave nothing for the enemy. His voice grew distant. We burned a village in Georgia. I was told it was a Confederate supply depot. Turned out it was just a village. Women, old people. They screamed, and I gave the order to keep burning. Josie's breath caught slightly. She kept her eyes fixed on the floor. That was 14 years ago. I've spent every day since trying to forget. Tried whiskey, tried wandering, tried work that exhausted me so thoroughly I couldn't think. He laughed hollow and bitter. Now I'm dying in a convent run by nuns who want to save my soul, and all I can think is maybe I deserve this. Maybe the cancer is just my past finally catching up. He fell silent. Minutes passed. The afternoon light shifted, painting long shadows across the floor. Finally, Josie moved. She stood, walked to the bedside table, poured his medicine into a cup, and held it out toward him. Their eyes met again. "Thank you," he said, taking the cup. "For listening, for staying." She gave the smallest nod, barely a movement at all, and then she was gone, her footsteps silent on the stone floor, leaving him alone with his ghosts. Chapter 4. Thunder before the storm. Evening brought cool air and long shadows. Josie sat in her cell, the door closed against the world, trying to convince herself that today had been ordinary. That the conversation, if it could be called that, with Colonel McAllister meant nothing. That she was still invisible, still safe, still alone. But his words echoed in her skull. "I gave the order to keep burning. Maybe I deserve this." She knew that guilt, that weight, the suffocating burden of surviving when others had not. She had been 16 when the men came. Her father's jewelry shop in San Francisco, targeted for the gold and silver he imported from Asia. They had come at night, as criminals always did, and when her father had resisted, Josie squeezed her eyes shut. "Hide, Josephine. Don't make a sound. Whatever happens, don't make a sound." She had hidden, in the crawl space beneath the floor, in darkness so complete she could not see her own hands. Meant emerging from the shadow existence she had built, where no one noticed her, no one threatened her, no one could hurt her. Telling meant risk, and Josie had spent 18 years learning that risk led only to loss. The next morning, everything changed. Josie was in the garden again, always the garden, always alone, when she heard the hoofbeats. 7 horses approaching fast. She straightened trowel in hand as the riders came into view through the convent's main gate. The man in front sat his horse with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Late 20s, handsome, with sharp features and cold eyes. Josie's blood turned to ice. Cole Hardin. She recognized him instantly, the angle of his jaw, the set of his shoulders, the way he held his head like a man with something to prove. She had seen him through a crack in a pantry door, illuminated by matchlight, ordering the death of his own father. He was 50 feet away. He was here. He was Mother Superior. The shout brought Elena Vasquez from the chapel, her face calm despite the interruption. "Gentlemen, this is a house of God. How may we help you?" Cole swung down from his horse. His brothers Virgil, with the scar, Emmett, with the soft face, remained mounted along with 4 rough-looking men Josie did not recognize. "Ma'am," Cole removed his hat, "I apologize for the intrusion. My name is Cole Hardin. We're searching for a criminal, a woman who witnessed the murder of Governor Whitmore and his family 3 weeks ago." Mother Superior's expression did not change. "I heard about the tragedy, a terrible fire," the newspaper said. "The fire was set to cover the crime. We have reason to believe the witness fled south, possibly seeking shelter in a religious establishment. And you believe she came here? We're checking every convent, every mission, every church within 100 miles. Cole's eyes swept the courtyard, passing over the gathered nuns like a searchlight. "She may be disguising herself, claiming to be something she's not." Josie stood frozen in the garden, paralyzed by the certainty that if she moved, if she breathed, if she so much as blinked, he would see her. His gaze passed over her and moved on. "He doesn't recognize me. He never saw my face clearly that night. He doesn't know who I am." "I can assure you," Mother Superior said, that every woman in this convent has been with us for years. We have no strangers here. Then you won't mind if we look around. I'm afraid I will. Elena's voice remained pleasant but carried steel beneath the surface. This is a house of God, Mr. Harden, a place of refuge and sanctuary. We do not permit armed men to wander our halls. Cole's eyes narrowed. For a moment, tension crackled in the air. Then he smiled a wolf's smile, all teeth and no warmth. Of course, my apologies, Mother Superior. We meant no disrespect. He remounted his horse. But I should warn you, the woman we're seeking is dangerous. She is wanted for conspiracy in the governor's murder. If she appears here, you would be wise to send word to the authorities immediately. Conspiracy, Mother Superior's eyebrow rose. I thought you said she was a witness. Witnesses can be accomplices. The line between seeing a crime and participating in it is thinner than you might think. He gathered his reins. We'll return in a few days to check again. I trust you'll cooperate then. It was not a question. The 7 riders turned and galloped back through the gate dust and rising in their wake. Josie did not realize she was shaking until she looked down and saw the trowel trembling in her grip. That night she could not sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Cole's face, his smile, the way his gaze had swept the courtyard hunting. He's coming back. He knows I'm somewhere. He'll find me eventually. She sat on the edge of her cot, knees drawn to her chest, and tried to calculate her options. She could run, leave the convent, head further south, lose herself in Mexico. But she had no money, no supplies, no knowledge of the land. She would die in the desert within days. She could stay. Hope that Cole's search turned up nothing, that he eventually gave up, that she could continue hiding in plain sight. But she had seen the look in his eyes, the cold determination. Cole Harden was not a man who gave up easily. She could tell someone, Mother Superior, the authorities, someone who could help. But telling meant explaining. Explaining meant revealing. Revealing meant being seen, truly seen for the first time in 18 years. And what then? Who would believe me, a mute woman with no evidence, no proof, no voice to speak the truth? Even if they believed her, what could they do? Cole had 7 armed men. The convent had none. The nearest law was 3 days' ride away, and Cole had made it clear he could paint her as an accomplice as easily as a witness. There was no good option. Only degrees of terrible. Josie pressed her face into her knees and wept silently, as she always did, as she had done since the night her parents died. Chapter 5, Breaking Silence. Morning found her in the garden, pulling weeds with desperate energy. She had not slept, had not eaten. The previous day's terror had curdled into a kind of numb determination that expressed itself through work ripping unwanted plants from the earth, as if she could rip her problems away just as easily. You're going to pull up the actual vegetables if you keep that pace. She spun. Colonel McAllister stood at the garden's edge, leaning heavily on a cane. He wore a robe over his night clothes, and his face was gray with exertion, but his eyes held that same terrible sharpness she had noticed before. Don't look so alarmed, he said. I asked Sister Agnes to help me walk today. Told her I refused to die without seeing the sun at least once more. He coughed, caught his breath. She's around here somewhere, probably fetching water to throw on me if I keel over. Josie remained frozen, a fistful of weeds clutched in her hand. McAllister studied her for a long moment. You're afraid, he said quietly, more afraid than yesterday. Something happened. She shook her head quickly, too quickly. I saw the riders. He moved closer, each step an effort. From my window, 7 men who looked like trouble. And you He paused. You stopped breathing when they arrived. I watched you. You didn't move for 20 minutes, like a rabbit hoping the hawk would pass. Josie's heart hammered against her ribs. He saw. He noticed. Those men weren't looking for just anyone. They were looking for someone specific, someone who was already here. She stepped backward, nearly tripping over the vegetable row. Easy. McAllister held up a hand. I'm not your enemy. I'm a dying man with nothing left to lose and no particular interest in making trouble for someone who's already carrying enough. He lowered himself onto the stone bench, the same one Mother Superior had used with a grimace of pain. I was a soldier for 20 years. I learned to read people, their faces, their movements, the way they hold their shoulders when they're lying versus telling the truth. He looked up at her. You're terrified of those men, which means they're not looking for some random criminal. They're looking for you. Silence. And since you've been here for 2 years, according to Sister Agnes, that means whatever happened wasn't here. It was somewhere else. Somewhere you ran from 3 weeks ago, which is when you started skipping meals and avoiding everyone even more than usual. Josie's hands were shaking. She dropped the weeds. I'm not going to ask what you saw. I'm not going to push. But I'm going to say this. McAllister met her eyes with an intensity that pinned her in place. Whatever it was, you can't carry it alone forever. Silence isn't safety, Sister Josephine. It's a prison. And those men, they're not going to stop looking just because you don't speak. Her throat felt tight. Her eyes burned. How does he know? How can he see so clearly? When you're ready to share, he continued, I'll listen. I have no authority, no power, no way to help you fight. But I was a colonel once. I know something about strategy, about holding positions, about what to do when the enemy comes for you. He rose slowly and took up his cane. Think about it. That's all I ask. He began the laborious process of walking back toward the dormitory. Josie watched him go, her mind a chaos of fear and confusion, and something she had not felt in years, hope. Faint, fragile, probably foolish hope, but real. She went to his room that evening, not during the day when others might see, not in the hours when the sisters moved through the halls. She waited until after Vespers, until the convent settled into its nighttime quiet, until the only sounds were crickets and wind and her own racing heartbeat. She knocked 2 soft taps. Come in. McAllister was sitting up in bed, a candle burning on the table beside him. He did not seem surprised to see her. Close the door, he said. She did. Sit. She took the chair by the window as before. He waited. For a long moment, neither moved. The candle flame flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Then Josie reached into the pocket of her habit and withdrew a folded piece of paper. Her hands trembled as she held it out. McAllister took it, unfolded it, read. His expression did not change as his eyes moved across the words she had written in her small, careful handwriting. I was there the night Governor Whitmore died. I saw who killed him. The men who came today, they are the murderers. The leader, Cole, he is the governor's illegitimate son. He killed his father to stop the truth from coming out. He killed the governor's wife. He ordered the house burned. I hid. I escaped. I came here. They are looking for me. They will kill me if they find me. McAllister read the paper twice. Then he looked up at Josie, his face grave. You witnessed a triple murder committed by the governor's own son. She nodded. And now that son is hunting you across the territory, claiming you're the criminal instead of the witness. Another nod. Does anyone else here know? She shook her head. McAllister let out a long breath. He refolded the paper carefully and handed it back to her. You're in a bad position, he said flatly. No evidence except your word, which you can't give verbally. No allies except a convent full of nuns who have no weapons and no way to defend themselves. And an enemy who has immense guns and every motivation in the world to make sure you never tell anyone what you saw. Josie's shoulders slumped. Hearing it laid out so starkly made the hopelessness even more acute. But, McAllister continued, and his voice shifted harder. Now more focused, the voice of a man who had spent decades solving impossible tactical problems. Bad positions can be defended if you're smart, if you're willing to fight. She looked up sharply. I'm not talking about guns and violence. I'm talking about strategy, witnesses, evidence. Getting your story to someone who can act on it before Cole Harden silences you permanently. He leaned forward. The law in Santa Fe is probably corrupt. The Governor Burr's murder is too big, too political for the local sheriff to touch. But federal marshals answer to a different authority. If we could get word to a federal marshal, someone outside Cole's influence. Josie's hand moved to the paper in her pocket. She pulled it out, wrote quickly on the back, showed him how they are watching the roads. Anyone who leaves the convent will be stopped. McAllister nodded slowly. You're right. We can't send a messenger, but we can prepare. Gather evidence. Write down everything you remember, every detail, every face, every word you overheard. If Cole's claim that you're an accomplice falls apart under scrutiny, if there are inconsistencies in his story, if someone starts asking the right questions, he broke into a coughing fit. It lasted nearly a minute, leaving him gasping and pale. Colonel, Sister Agnes's voice came from the hallway. I'm fine, he called back, though he clearly wasn't. Just give me a moment. When the footsteps retreated, he turned back to Josie. I don't know how much time I have. Weeks, maybe less. But while I'm alive, I can help you think this through. Help you prepare. Help you, he smiled grimly. Help you find your voice, Sister Josephine. She left his room an hour later, her mind spinning with plans and possibilities. McAllister had given her homework, write down everything she remembered about the night of the murder. Every word Cole had spoken, every detail of his appearance, every observation about his brothers and his men. Details matter, he had said. In court, in battle, in survival, details are what separate truth from lies. The more specific you can be, the harder it will be for Cole to dismiss you as a confused witness or an accomplice. It was nearly midnight. The convent lay silent around her, wrapped in desert darkness. She made her way back toward her cell, moving on instinct, through corridors she had walked 1,000 times, and froze. Ahead in the main courtyard, she saw movement. A figure, standing in the shadows near the gate, too large to be one of the sisters, too still to be a patient on a restless walk. As Josie watched, hidden in the dormitory doorway, the figure struck a match. For one brief moment, the flame illuminated a scarred face. Virgil. He lit a cigarette, took a long drag, and his eyes swept the courtyard. Then he dropped the match, crushed it under his boot, and disappeared into the darkness beyond the wall. Josie's heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her teeth. They're watching. They're already watching. They're not going to wait for us to be ready. She ran to Tom's room and knocked urgently. When he opened the door, confused, half asleep, she thrust a hastily scrawled note into his hands. They're here, one of Cole's men, watching the convent. McAllister read the note. His face went hard. Then we're out of time, he said. He turned back into his room and moved to the small trunk at the foot of his bed. His hands shook as he opened it, from illness, from cold, from something else. He reached inside and pulled out a Colt peacemaker, its metal dulled with age and disuse. I thought I was done with this, he said quietly. Thought I'd left the killing behind, but it seems God has other plans. He checked the cylinder. Loaded, still functional. Cole Hardin is coming, Sister Josephine. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe the day after. But he's coming. McAllister looked up at her, and in his dying eyes, she saw something that hadn't been there before: purpose. The question is, when he gets here, what are we going to do about it? Josie stood in the doorway of a dying man's room, watching him hold a gun he'd sworn never to touch again, and felt the last walls of her 18-year silence begin to crack. She picked up her pen, and she began to write. Dawn came reluctantly, as if the sun itself was hesitant to illuminate what the day might bring. Tom McAllister had not slept. Neither had Josie. They had spent the remaining hours of darkness in his room, him talking strategy, while she wrote questions and observations on sheet after sheet of paper. By the time gray light began seeping through the window, they had the beginnings of a plan, fragile and desperate, but a plan nonetheless. First things first, Tom said, pushing himself upright against his pillows. The effort cost him. She could see it in the tremor of his arms, the way his breath came short and ragged. I need to see the convent, all of it. Every wall, every gate, every potential weakness. Josie wrote quickly. You can barely walk. Then someone will help me walk. He met her eyes with that sharp gaze that seemed to see straight through excuses. I've defended positions with less time and fewer resources than this, but I can't do it blind. She hesitated, then nodded. An hour later, after morning prayers had ended and the sisters had dispersed to their daily tasks, Josie pushed Tom's wheeled chair through the convent grounds. Sister Agnes had protested loudly and at length, but Tom had simply fixed her with a stare that must have commanded thousands of soldiers in its day. I'm dying anyway, he had told her. Let me be useful first. Now they moved slowly along the perimeter, Tom's eyes cataloging everything they passed. Adobe walls, he murmured, running his hand along the rough surface. 2 feet thick, maybe more. Built to last. A rifle bullet won't punch through this, not a standard one anyway. He gestured for Josie to stop at the main gate. Massive wooden doors reinforced with iron bands hung from hinges that looked older than the territory itself. One main entrance, good for defense limits their points of attack, but also means we have only one way out if things go bad. He craned his neck, studying the wall above. Is there a walkway up top, somewhere a man could stand and shoot? Josie pointed toward a narrow stone staircase, half hidden behind a storage shed. Show me. Getting him up those stairs nearly killed them both. Tom's lungs rebelled with every step, producing wet, tearing coughs that left spots of blood on his handkerchief. But he refused to stop, refused to turn back, and by the time they reached the top, Josie was half carrying him. The walkway was narrow, barely 3 feet wide, and the parapet rose only to waist height, but it provided a clear view of the desert stretching in every direction. This is where we make our stand, Tom said once he had caught his breath. If they come, I can see them from half a mile away. Plenty of time to prepare. He pointed toward a cluster of rocks, perhaps 300 yards out. That's their best cover. They'll gather there before attacking. A good rifle could pick them off. He trailed off, seized by another coughing fit. Josie steadied him, her face tight with concern. When the fit passed, Tom laughed a dark, bitter sound. Listen to me. Planning battles I won't live to fight. He turned to look at her, his eyes suddenly weary. The truth is, Sister Josephine, even if I were healthy 7 armed men against 1 old soldier in a convent full of nuns, those aren't winning odds. She pulled out her paper, wrote, then why try, because the alternative is surrender. And I've seen what men like Cole Hardin do to people who surrender. He gripped the parapet, knuckles white. At least if we fight, we have a chance. Slim, maybe impossible, but a chance. They made their way back down slower, more carefully, and continued their circuit of the convent. Tom noted the rear gate smaller than the main entrance, but still substantial. He identified the well in the central courtyard, the storage rooms that could serve as fallback positions, the chapel with its thick stone walls. If everything else fails, he said, the chapel becomes the last refuge, everyone inside doors barred. It won't hold forever, but it might hold long enough. Long enough for what? Tom didn't answer. They both knew there might not be anything to wait for. They had returned to the main courtyard when the voice came from behind them. You're planning a defense. Tom's hand moved instinctively toward his hip before he remembered he wasn't carrying. He turned. The man standing in the shadow of the dormitory was perhaps 50, with skin the color of red clay and hair streaked with gray. He stood with the stillness of someone who had learned long ago that movement attracted attention and attention attracted bullets. Samuel Crow, the man said. Most people call me Sam. Tom studied him with the assessing gaze of a lifetime soldier. You're one of the patients. I was a scout, cavalry, until I took a Comanche arrow in the shoulder and the army decided I wasn't useful anymore. Sam stepped forward and Josie noticed he moved with a slight limp, favoring his left leg. The sisters took me in 3 years ago, fed me, healed me, gave me a place to be when I had nowhere else. And you've been listening to my strategic assessments. Hard not to. You weren't exactly whispering. Sam's dark eyes flickered to Josie, then back to Tom. I know who those men are looking for. The sisters might believe that story about a criminal, but I've seen enough liars to know the truth when it's hiding in plain sight. Josie stiffened, her heart rate spiking. Easy, Sam said. I'm not your enemy. I'm just a man who owes this place more than he can ever repay. He turned to Tom. You're thinking about how to hold these walls with no soldiers. I'm telling you, you've got one. Maybe not much of one, but one. Tom's eyes narrowed. You said you were wounded. Can you still fight? In answer, Sam reached down and drew something from inside his boot. A knife not large, but wickedly sharp with a blade that had clearly seen use. I can't shoot worth a damn anywhere. Shoulder won't hold steady. He flipped the knife, caught it by the blade, then flipped it again. The motion was smooth, practiced, almost casual. But I can throw. Learned it from my mother's people before the cavalry found me. 30 feet I can put this through a man's hand, 20 feet through his throat. He slid the knife back into his boot. How many do you have? Tom asked. 3 more, plus a hatchet I use for firewood. Sam's expression didn't change, but something fierce flickered behind his eyes. Those men come here, they'll find out this isn't the easy target they think it is. Tom was silent for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. Colonel Thomas McAllister. Union Army retired. Sam took it. I know who you were, Colonel. Sherman's March. The burning. Tom's jaw tightened. My mother's people had a saying, Sam continued. What a man was matters less than what a man does. You burned villages once. Maybe now you save one. Their hands remained clasped for a moment longer. Then Tom nodded once and turned back to the convent. We have work to do. Chapter 7 Lessons. The afternoon sun beat down without mercy, turning the courtyard into a furnace. Josie sat on an overturned crate in the storage room, the Colt Peacemaker, heavy and unfamiliar in her hands. Tom sat across from her, watching with eyes that missed nothing. You're holding it like it's a snake that might bite you, he observed. Which fair enough it might, but a gun only does what the person holding it decides. It has no will of its own. She adjusted her grip, trying to mimic the way she'd seen him hold it. Better, now the cylinder holds 6 rounds. This model you load through the gate here. He reached over, demonstrating, despite the tremor in his fingers. 1 round at a time. Slow process, which is why you don't want to empty all 6 if you can help it. Josie practiced the motion, opening the loading gate, inserting the brass cartridge, closing it again. Her hands shook. You're thinking too much, Tom said. I can see it in your face. You're imagining what it would mean to actually fire this, to actually hit someone. She stopped, met his eyes. I'm not going to tell you it's easy. It isn't. First time I fired a weapon at another human being, I was 19 years old and so scared I thought I'd soil myself. He coughed, wiped his mouth. But I pulled the trigger anyway, because the alternative was dying. Josie set the gun down on the crate between them, pulled out her paper. I don't know if I can kill someone. Tom read the words, nodded slowly. Maybe you can't, maybe you won't have to, but there's a difference between killing and defending, between murder and survival. He picked up the gun, turned it over in his hands. This weapon killed men at Shiloh, at Antietam, at a dozen engagements I've spent 14 years trying to forget. But it also saved lives, mine, my soldiers, the people we were protecting. He held it out to her. The question isn't whether you can kill. The question is whether you can hold this weapon while someone else tries to kill you and have the courage not to run. Because if Cole Hardin gets past me, past Sam, past whoever else stands between him and you, you'll need to be ready. Josie looked at the gun, at his weathered hand holding it steady despite the sickness eating him alive. She took it. Good. Tom leaned back at exhaustion flickering across his features. Now, let's talk about aim. They practiced until the light began to fade, not shooting, but everything else. How to hold the weapon steady, how to breathe while aiming, how to anticipate the recoil even without experiencing it, how to stay calm when every instinct screamed to flee. By the end, Josie's arms ached and her fingers were raw from handling the unfamiliar metal. But when she held the Colt now, it felt less like a foreign object and more like a tool. Dangerous, yes, but a tool nonetheless. You're a quick study, Tom said as she helped him back toward his room. Most recruits took weeks to get that comfortable with a sidearm. She wrote, I had a good teacher. He snorted. I had good material to work with. You've got steady hands and sharp eyes. The only thing holding you back is, he trailed off, fear. No, not fear. Fear keeps you alive. He stopped in the corridor, turned to face her. Doubt, you doubt yourself, sister, Josephine. You've doubted yourself for 18 years. Every time something required you to step forward, you stepped back instead. Every time someone needed you to speak, even in writing, you stayed silent. Her eyes dropped. I'm not judging you. God knows, I've spent 14 years running from my own past, but running doesn't work forever. He reached out, tilted her chin up until she met his gaze. Whatever happens in the next few days, you need to believe you're worth fighting for, worth surviving for. Because if you don't believe it, you'll find a way to make it not true. Josie felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back. You believe that she wrote that I'm worth fighting for? Tom smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him, tired but genuine. I believe it, he said. Now you need to believe it too. Night fell. The convent settled into its evening routine, vespers, then dinner, then the quiet hours before sleep. But tonight the silence felt different, heavier, pregnant with the threat of what dawn might bring. Josie stood at the window of her cell watching the darkness beyond the walls. Somewhere out there, Cole Hardin was planning, waiting, preparing to take everything she had left. Am I worth fighting for? The question circled in her mind like a hawk searching for prey. For 18 years, she had answered it with silence, with invisibility, with the slow erasure of everything that made her Josephine Tran until only a ghost remained. But ghosts couldn't fight. Ghosts couldn't protect the people who had sheltered them. Ghosts couldn't speak truth to power, couldn't bear witness, couldn't matter. She turned from the window and moved to the small desk where her papers lay scattered. The account of the murder, the descriptions of Cole and his brothers, the evidence that might make a difference if it ever reached the right hands. Am I worth fighting for? She picked up her pen, began to write. Not evidence this time, not facts or details or strategic observations. Words. Her words. The words she had kept locked inside for 18 years. My name is Josephine Tran. I was born in San Francisco in 1844 to a French-Vietnamese merchant and his Vietnamese wife. I had a voice once. I used it to sing, to laugh, to call my mother's name across the garden. She wrote until her hand cramped, until the candle burned low, until the words on the page became a flood that swept away years of accumulated silence. I am not a ghost. I am not invisible. I am not nothing. I am a witness, and I will not be silenced again. Chapter 8, The Dead Horse. Sister Agnes found it at dawn. Her scream brought everyone running. Tom hobbling on his cane, Josie still buttoning her habit, Mother Superior with her rosary clutched tight in weathered fingers. The horse lay just outside the main gate, its head severed cleanly from its body. Blood soaked the dust, turning it into dark mud that stank of copper and death. Pinned to the gate with a knife, Josie recognized it as the kind Cole's men carried was a single sheet of paper. Tom pulled it free. Read aloud, "Give us the Oriental girl, or everyone dies. We return at dawn tomorrow." Silence on him on. Sister Maria began to weep softly. Father Miguel crossed himself, lips moving in silent prayer. Even Sam Crow, who had seen more death than most, looked shaken. "They know she's here," Tom said quietly. "They've been watching, probably followed someone or saw something that gave it away." He turned to Josie, his face grim. "This is escalation. They're done playing game." Mother Superior stepped forward, her back straight despite her age. "We should discuss this, all of us, inside." They gathered in the chapel, the 8 sisters, Father Miguel, the 3 patients, including Tom and Sam Josie, standing apart in the shadow of a pillar. The morning light filtered through stained glass, casting colored patterns across the stone floor. "We have been threatened," Mother Superior said, her voice carrying through the sacred space. "Men who claim to be seeking justice have instead revealed themselves to be murderers. They want Sister Josephine. They claim she is a criminal, but Colonel McAllister has evidence that she is in fact the victim, a witness to their crimes." Murmurs rippled through the assembled group. "I will not pretend this is an easy situation. These men are armed and dangerous. We are not equipped to fight them. The nearest law enforcement is days away, and even if we could reach them, there is no guarantee they would arrive in time or that they would believe our story over that of men with money and influence." She paused, letting her words sink in. "So I ask you now, as your Mother Superior and as your sister in Christ, what do we do?" Silence stretched long and uncomfortable. Then Father Miguel spoke. "We cannot surrender an innocent woman to murderers. That would be a sin against God and against everything this convent stands for." "But if we don't," Sister Maria said, her voice trembling, "they'll kill all of us. Didn't you read the note, everyone dies?" "They may kill us anyway," Tom said from his seat near the altar. "Men like Cole Hardin don't leave witnesses. Even if we gave him Sister Josephine, he'd likely burn this place to the ground just to make sure no one could tell tales." "You don't know that?" Sister Maria protested. "I know men like him. I've fought alongside men like him and am against them. He killed his own father to protect a secret. You think he'll hesitate to kill a few nuns?" More murmurs, frightened glances. Mother Superior raised her hand for silence. Colonel McAllister raises a valid point. Surrender offers no guarantee of survival, only a guarantee of sin, the sin of handing over an innocent to her death. She turned to look at Josie. "Josephine, you are the one most affected by this decision. What do you wish us to do?" Every eye in the chapel fixed on her. Josie felt the weight of their gazes like a physical pressure. Her first instinct was to shrink, to disappear, to become the ghost she had been for so long. But Tom's words echoed in her mind. You need to believe you're worth fighting for. She stepped forward, into the light. Slowly, deliberately, she pulled out her paper and pen, wrote in large, clear letters, I saw them kill Governor Whitmore. I saw them kill his wife. I hid when I should have spoken. I ran when I should have fought. She held up the paper for all to see, then began a new sheet. I will not run again. I will not hide again. If I die here, I will die as a witness to the truth, not as a coward who bought her life with silence. She paused, then added one more line. But I will not make that choice for you. If you want me to go, I will go. This is your home, not mine. She lowered the paper, silence. Then Mother Superior walked across the chapel floor, her footsteps echoing off the ancient stones. She stopped in front of Josie and took both of her hands. This convent was built 200 years ago by men who refused to surrender their faith to those who would destroy it. They were threatened, attacked, besieged, and they endured. Her grip tightened. You are one of us, Josephine. You have been one of us since the day you arrived at our gates, mute and frightened and alone. We do not abandon our own. She turned to face the others. This convent will stand, and Sister Josephine will stand with us. Chapter 9, the first battle. They came at dawn, 7 riders' silhouettes against the rising sun spreading out in a line as they approached the convent walls. Cole Hardin sat his horse at the center, flanked by Virgil and Emmett. The 4 hired guns fanned out to either side. Tom stood on the walkway above the gate, the rifle he had borrowed from Sam Crow's small arsenal, a Winchester repeater, old but functional, braced against his shoulder. Below, Sam waited near the rear gate with his knives. The sisters had been ordered to shelter in the chapel, though Tom had seen Mother Superior lingering near the main building with a cast-iron skillet in her hands. Josie crouched behind the parapet at Tom's side. She held the Colt, though they both knew she was unlikely to use it. Last chance, Cole's voice rang across the morning stillness. Send out the witness and no one else needs to get hurt. Tom leaned over the parapet. Go back to Santa Fe, Hardin. We've sent word to the federal marshals. They'll be here within the week. Whatever you do to us, it won't stop the truth from coming out. A bluff, a desperate bluff. No messenger had been sent. There was no way to get one out without Cole's men intercepting them. But Cole didn't know that. Federal marshals, Cole laughed, but there was an edge to it now. Uncertainty. And who's going to believe a mute woman over me, the governor's own son, seeking justice for his murdered father? The governor's bastard son, Tom shouted back. Who killed him to steal his inheritance? We know the whole story, Hardin. We have it in writing. Every detail of that night, everything she saw and heard. You can kill us all, but that document will survive. It will find its way to someone who matters. And then your precious inheritance won't be worth the paper it's printed on. Silence. Tom watched Cole's face too far away to read clearly, but he could see the tension in the way the younger man sat his horse. The calculation. Then Cole raised his hand. Take the gate. 2 of the hired guns spurred their horses forward, heading for the main entrance at a gallop. Tom tracked the first one, steadied his breath, and squeezed the trigger. The Winchester kicked against his shoulder. The first rider jerked, clutched his arm, and tumbled from his saddle. The second rider veered away, but not fast enough. Tom's second shot caught his horse in the flank, sending the animal into a screaming, bucking panic that threw its rider into the dust. Get to cover, Cole roared. The remaining riders scattered, seeking the rocks and scrub that offered protection from Tom's elevated position. Tom fired twice more, missing once, clipping another man's leg before a return volley forced him to duck behind the parapet. Bullets cracked against the adobe, sending chips of dried mud flying. Stay down, he barked at Josie. She was already pressed flat against the walkway, her face pale but determined. A shout from the rear of the convent. Sam's voice followed by a cry of pain that didn't belong to him. They're trying the back gate. Tom struggled to rise, but a coughing fit seized him, doubling him over. Josie grabbed his arm, steadied him. Go, he gasped. Help Sam. I'll cover the front. She hesitated for just a moment, then she was gone, moving along the walkway toward the rear of the compound. Tom forced himself upright, peered over the parapet. Cole and his remaining men had retreated to the rocks perhaps 200 yards out. Too far for accurate rifle fire, and they knew it. They were regrouping, planning. From the back of the convent, he heard another shout, then the distinctive whistle of a thrown blade followed by a scream. Sam. The old Apache still had some fight in him. Minutes stretched into an hour. The sun climbed higher, turning the morning chill into sweltering heat. No more attacks came, just the occasional potshot to keep the defenders pinned, a reminder that the siege was far from over. Finally, Cole's voice rang out again. "You got lucky today, old man, but luck runs out. We'll be back tonight, and this time we won't be so gentle," hoofbeats receding into the distance. Tom slumped against the parapet, his chest heaving, blood flecking his lips with each cough. Josie found him there a few minutes later, her habit dusty and her eyes wide. "We held them," he managed. "First round goes to us." She showed him her paper. "Sam is hurt. One of them got close enough to cut him before he threw. Shallow wound, but he needs stitches. And Mother Superior broke a man's arm with a skillet." He ran screaming. Despite everything, Tom laughed. It turned into a cough, then a wheeze, then a rattle that seemed to come from somewhere deep and broken inside him. "We won the battle," he said when he could speak again. "But the war isn't over. They'll be back like he said, and next time they won't underestimate us." He met her eyes. "Next time they'll come to kill." Chapter 10. Josie's Gambit. The convent was somber that evening. They had won, yes, but the cost was already apparent. Sam's wound needed careful tending. Tom could barely stand, each breath a struggle that left him gray-faced and trembling. Two sisters had been hit by flying debris from the bullets striking the walls, minor injuries, but injuries nonetheless. And everyone knew it was only the beginning. "They'll hit us harder tomorrow," Tom said, gathered with the others in the chapel as darkness fell. "Today was a probe. They wanted to see what we had. Now they know." "What do they know?" Father Miguel asked. "That we have one rifleman who can barely breathe, one knife thrower with a wounded arm, and a handful of nuns with kitchen implements. That we're desperate and cornered and running out of options." Mother Superior's face was tight. "Then what do we do?" Josie stood before Tom could answer. She walked to the center of the chapel where the colored light of the stained glass fell around her like a benediction. Then she began to write. "I have a plan," she showed them. "Cole killed the governor because he was about to be acknowledged as a son. He killed to protect a secret that he is illegitimate." She continued, "But not all of them are killers. The youngest brother, Emmett, did not participate. I saw him. He stood frozen. He was crying." Tom frowned. "You think he might turn on his brothers?" "I think he might be the weak link. He didn't want this. He was dragged into it by Cole's ambition. Even so, how does that help us? He's out there with them." Josie took a deep breath, or what passed for one, a long inhalation through her nose as she steadied herself. "I go to him," she wrote, "alone, at night. I convince him to testify against Cole, to tell the truth." "Absolutely not." Tom's voice cracked with the force of his objection. "You'll be killed the moment they see you." "Not if I'm careful. Cole expects us to hide. He doesn't expect us to reach out. It's too dangerous. I forbid it." Josie met his eyes. Slowly, deliberately, she wrote 4 words. "Silence is death." Then beneath it, "I have been silent for 18 years. Enough." Tom stared at her, at the set of her jaw, the steel in her eyes. "You're sure about this?" She nodded. "Then we do it together. Sam and I will follow at a distance. If something goes wrong, no." She wrote quickly, emphatically. "You can barely walk. Sam is injured. If they catch all 3 of us, the convent has no defenders. This has to be me, alone." The silence that followed was heavy with fear, with doubt, with the weight of all the things that could go wrong. Finally, Mother Superior spoke. "She's right, Colonel. This is her choice to make." Tom's hands clenched, but he nodded. "At least take this." He pressed something into her palm, a small knife blade gleaming in the candlelight. "And know this, if you're not back by midnight, I'm coming after you, dying man or not." Josie slipped the knife into her sleeve. Then, without looking back, she walked out into the night. Chapter 11. The Trap. The desert was silver in shadow under the half-moon. Josie moved carefully, staying low, using the scrub and rocks for cover as she made her way toward the flickering light of the bandits' camp. She could hear voices, laughter, the clink of bottles, men celebrating their siege, confident that tomorrow would bring victory. She circled wide, searching for any sign of Emmett separated from the group. Her heart pounded so loudly she was certain they must hear it. There, a figure sat alone on a rock at the edge of the camp, facing away from the fire. younger than the others, smaller. His shoulders hunched with the posture of someone who wanted to be anywhere else. Emmett, Josie took a breath, stepped out of the shadows. He sensed her before he saw her spinning with his hand reaching for his gun. She held up both hands, empty, surrendering. Emmett's eyes went wide. You, she pressed a finger to her lips, gestured for him to stay quiet. He glanced back toward the camp. The others hadn't noticed. What are you doing here? He hissed. Are you crazy if Cole sees you? She pulled out her paper, wrote quickly, showed him. I know you didn't want this. I saw you that night. You didn't pull the trigger. You were crying. Emmett's face crumpled. For a moment, he looked like what he was, a young man barely into his 20s, trapped in something far beyond his control. I tried to stop him, he whispered. I told him we should just talk to the governor, work something out. But Cole, his voice broke. Pa deserved better than that, even if he never claimed us, even if he kept us like a dirty secret. He didn't deserve to die like that. Then help me stop Cole, Josie wrote. Testify to what you saw. Tell the truth. You don't understand. Cole will kill me. He's my brother and he'll kill me without blinking. The federal marshals. What federal marshals? There aren't any marshals coming. Cole's got the sheriff in Santa Fe in his pocket. Nobody's coming to help you. Josie's stomach dropped. Then we help ourselves, you and me. We tell the truth to someone who will listen. There's no one? Well, the voice came from behind her. Cold, amused, deadly. Josie spun. Cole Hardin stood 10 feet away, pistol drawn, smile sharp as a blade. I knew you'd come out eventually. Rabbits always run when you smoke them from their holes. He stepped closer. Thought you might try for the road to Santa Fe. Never imagined you'd be stupid enough to walk right into our camp. Virgil emerged from the darkness to her left, his own weapon leveled. The cut on his thigh was bandaged, but he moved without apparent pain, fury burning in his scarred face. The mute whore who stabbed me, he growled. I owe you for that. Josie backed away straight into the grip of a third man, one of the hired guns. He twisted her arm behind her back, forcing a silent cry of pain from her lips. Now, Cole said, circling her slowly, here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me, right, since you can't talk, exactly what you saw that night. Every detail, every word. And then you're going to sign a confession admitting that you were an accomplice, not a witness. He leaned close, his breath hot on her face. Do that, and I'll make your death quick. Refuse, and my brother Virgil gets to spend some quality time on it with you first. He's been looking forward to it. Josie's mind raced, the knife in her sleeve. If she could just Cole. Emmett's voice small but steady. Cole turned. What? Let her go. Silence. What did you say? I said let her go. Emmett stepped forward, and Josie saw that his hand was shaking, but it was resting on the butt of his pistol. This has gone far enough. We killed Pa. We killed his wife. That was bad enough. But killing nuns, burning a convent, we'll be damned for eternity. Cole's expression flickered between disbelief and rage. You're choosing her over your own blood. I'm choosing my soul over your greed. Emmett's voice cracked, but he didn't back down. You want the inheritance, fine, take it. But I won't help you murder any more innocent people. Cole stared at his youngest brother for a long moment. Then he shot him. The sound was deafening. Emmett crumpled, clutching his stomach, a look of shock on his young face. Anyone else have objections? Cole asked, sweeping his gaze across the gathered men. No one spoke. Good. He turned back to Josie. Now where were we? Josie didn't think, didn't plan, didn't hesitate. She drove her elbow backward into the gut of the man holding her, felt his grip loosen, and in the same motion pulled Tom's knife from her sleeve. She slashed wildly, felt the blade connect with something, heard a scream, and then she was running into the darkness, running for her life. Gunshots cracked behind her. Bullets whined past, throwing up spurts of dirt. She didn't look back. She just ran. She almost didn't make it. A bullet grazed her arm, a line of fire that made her stumble. Another tore through her habit, missing flesh by inches. The night was chaos and noise and terror, and she could hear hoofbeats now. Riders pursuing, closing the distance. Then out of the darkness, a gunshot. different from the others. Heavier. A horse screamed, a man cursed. Another shot, and another. Tom McAllister stood at the crest of a small hill, the Winchester braced against his shoulder, firing with methodical precision despite the coughing that racked his frame between each pull of the trigger. Sam Crow was beside him, launching knife after knife into the darkness, creating chaos among the pursuers. "Run!" Tom roared at her. "Get to the convent now!" Josie ran. Behind her, she heard Cole's voice, furious and commanding, calling his men back. Regrouping, they wouldn't pursue further tonight, not with shooters in the darkness picking them off. She reached Tom's position, gasping, bleeding from the graze on her arm. "You're hurt," he said. She shook her head, pulled out her paper with trembling hands. "Emmett, Cole shot him, his own brother." Tom's face went hard. "Did he survive?" "I don't know. He was alive when I ran. Then there's nothing we can do for him now." Tom gripped her shoulder, steadying her or himself, she couldn't tell. "Can you walk?" She nodded. "Then let's get back. This night isn't over yet." Chapter 12, All is Lost. The knock came an hour before dawn. Everyone was awake. Sleep was impossible with Cole's threat hanging over them and Josie's failed mission fresh in their minds. They gathered in the chapel, praying or simply sitting in stunned silence, waiting for whatever came next. The knock was loud, insistent. Tom, who had collapsed into a chair near the altar and hadn't moved since, looked up sharply. "Don't answer it." But Father Miguel was already moving toward the door. "It might be help. Someone who heard the gunfire." "Don't." Too late. The priest opened the door. A man stood in the threshold, tall, wearing a marshal's badge, his face weathered by years of sun and wind. "Deputy Marshal Henry Shaw," he said. "I'm here about the Whitmore murder. I understand you have a witness." For one breathless moment, hope flared in the chapel. Then the hope died, because behind Shaw, visible in the pre-dawn light, were Cole Hardin and his remaining men. Their guns weren't drawn, not yet, but they were there, watching, waiting. "I found these gentlemen on the road," Shaw continued, stepping inside. "They told me a disturbing story about a criminal hiding in your convent. I'm here to investigate." Tom pushed himself upright. "Marshal, the real criminals are standing behind you. Cole Hardin murdered Governor Whitmore. We have a witness." "So I've heard." Shaw's eyes were unreadable. "That's why I came alone. The main investigation team is 2 days behind me. I wanted to assess the situation personally. Then arrest him, arrest all of them. On what evidence? The word of a mute woman against the governor's own son." Shaw shook his head. "I need more than that. I need testimony, documentation, something that will hold up in a court of law." "We have documentation," Tom said. "Sister Josephine has written everything she saw." "Then let me take it back to Santa Fe. Let me present it to the investigation team. If it's as compelling as you say, we'll have warrants issued within the week." Josie stepped forward. Her arm was bandaged, her face pale, but her eyes burned with desperate hope. She reached into her habit and pulled out the folded pages of her testimony. Shaw took them, glanced through them. "This is detailed," he admitted. "Very detailed. I'll ride back tonight and make sure this reaches the right people." "You can't leave tonight," Tom said. "Cole's men are out there. They'll kill you before you get a mile." "Let me worry about that." Shaw tucked the papers inside his coat. "In the meantime, stay inside these walls. Don't engage them. Just hold out until the cavalry arrives." He turned to go. "Marshal," Tom called, "before you ride, do you have men, anyone who can stay and help defend this place?" Shaw paused at the door. His face was genuinely regretful. "I wish I did, Colonel, but I came alone." He glanced back at them, at the frightened sisters, the wounded defenders, the dying soldier. "God be with you." Then he was gone. They found his body 2 hours later. One of Cole's men threw it over the convent wall at sunrise, along with a note written in a hand that shook with fury. "No more warnings, no more mercy. Give us the girl or burn." The sisters wept. Father Miguel fell to his knees, praying for Shaw's soul. Even Sam Crow, who had seen so much death, turned away with something that might have been grief. Tom didn't weep. He was beyond tears. He just looked at the body of the man who had been their last hope and felt something inside him, something that had survived battles and burnings and cancer, finally break. "It's over," he said quietly. "There's no one coming. No cavalry, no marshals, no help." He turned to face the others. His eyes found Josie's. "I'm sorry," he said. "I told you we could figure this out together. I promised. And I failed." Josie shook her head violently, reached for her paper, but Tom was already walking away, his steps slow and heavy, each one carrying him further into despair. "We have until nightfall," he said over his shoulder. "After that, God help us all." Chapter 13, The Darkest Hour. Josie found Mother Superior kneeling before the statue of Mary in the corner of the chapel. The older woman looked up at her approach, and Josie saw something she had never seen on that weathered face before: fear. "I have led this convent for 32 years, Mother Superior said quietly. Through drought and disease, in the death of sisters I loved like family. I have always believed that God would provide, that faith would see us through." She looked toward the window where smoke was beginning to rise from the bandits' camp, a signal perhaps of what was to come. "But now, I don't know, Josephine. I don't know if faith is enough." Josie sat down beside her. She didn't write anything, just sat. "You were right, you know," Mother Superior continued. "What you wrote in the chapel when we made our decision to stand together. You said this was our home, not yours. You gave us the choice to fight or surrender." She reached out, took Josie's hand. "But you were wrong about one thing. This is your home. You've been part of this community for 18 years. You've healed our sick with your herbs, fed us with your garden, shared our lives even when you couldn't share our words." Her grip tightened. "Whatever happens tonight, you belong here. You always have." Josie felt tears streaming down her face. She couldn't stop them. "I brought this on you," she wrote with her free hand, the words shaky and blurred. "All of this is my fault." "No," Mother Superior's voice was firm. "Cole Hardin brought this on us. His greed, his cruelty, his willingness to kill anyone who threatens his stolen fortune. You are the victim, Josephine Vermont. The witness, not the cause. But if I had just stayed silent, then a murderer would go unpunished. A man's death would mean nothing, and you would spend the rest of your life carrying a secret that would eat you alive." She stood, her legs unsteady, but her resolve firm. "I'm going to find him. We're going to figure something out, because I didn't survive 18 years of silence just to die quiet." Tom was in his room, sitting on the edge of his bed, staring at the Colt in his hands. Josie knocked softly, entered without waiting for permission. "Go away," he said without looking up. "There's nothing left to plan, nothing left to do." She walked to him, sat down beside him, took the gun gently from his hands and set it aside. Then she wrote, "You told me I needed to believe I was worth fighting for. I was wrong. We're not going to win this. All I did was give you false hope." "No," she underlined the word 3 times. "You gave me real hope, for the first time in 18 years. Tom finally looked at her. His eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted, defeated. "I'm dying, Josie. The cancer's eating me alive. Even if we survive tonight, I have weeks at most. I thought maybe I could do one good thing before I went. Save one innocent person. Prove that my life wasn't completely wasted." He shook his head. "But I can't even do that." Josie wrote quickly, urgently. "You already have," he frowned. "What?" "You saved me, not from Cole, not yet, but from myself. From the prison I built out of silence and fear. You made me believe I could speak again, even without a voice. You made me believe I mattered. That's not nothing, Tom. That's everything." He stared at her words for a long moment. Then slowly something shifted in his expression. The despair didn't disappear. It was too deep for that, but something else joined it. Something that looked like determination. "Damn you," he said softly, but there was no anger in it. "Damn you for making me hope again." She smiled, a small, trembling smile, but real. "So what do we do?" Tom was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood wincing at the pain in his chest and walked to the window. "Shaw said the main investigation team is 2 days behind him. That means someone else is coming. Someone who doesn't know Cole's story, who hasn't been bought off. But we don't have 2 days. No, we have hours." He turned back to face her. "But Shaw also said he was taking your testimony back to Santa Fe, which means Cole's men have it now." Josie's heart sank. All those pages, all that evidence. But they don't have you. Tom's eyes sharpened, focusing with something of his old intensity. "You're still the witness. You still have the truth locked inside your head. And as long as you're alive, that truth can be told. So what's the plan? We survive until help arrives. That's all. We hold these walls, we stay alive, and we pray that someone, anyone comes before Cole burns us out. He picked up the Colt, checked the cylinder. 6 rounds. It's not a good plan, he admitted. It's barely a plan at all, but it's what we have. He held out his hand to her. Will you fight with me, Sister Josephine, one more time? She took his hand, held it tight, and nodded. Chapter 14. Before the storm, they gathered in the chapel as the sun began to set all of them one last time. Tom stood at the front, leaning heavily on his cane but refusing to sit. I won't lie to you, he said. The odds are against us. Cole has more men, more guns, and more reason to see us dead. But we have something he doesn't. What's that? Sister Maria asked, her voice small. This. Tom gestured at the walls around them. 200 years of faith in stone, and the will to defend it. He looked at each face in turn, the frightened sisters, the wounded Sam Crow, Father Miguel with his rosary, Mother Superior with her unshakable dignity, and Josie standing apart as always but no longer invisible. I'm going to ask each of you to do something you have never done before, to fight, to resist, not with guns most of you don't know how and there's no time to learn, but with courage, with determination, with the simple refusal to let evil win. He coughed, steadied himself. When they come, I'll be on the wall with Sam. We'll hold them as long as we can. Father Miguel, I need you in the bell tower. Ring that bell like the world is ending. It's a long shot, but if there's anyone within earshot, they might investigate. And us, Mother Superior asked. You barricade yourselves in the chapel. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone except me or Sam. If we fall, he hesitated. Pray. Josie stepped forward, held up her paper. I'll be on the wall with you. Josie, you taught me to load and aim. Let me help. Tom studied her for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. All right, but you stay behind me. And if I tell you to run, you run. She nodded. The chapel fell silent. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the desert in shades of red and gold. One more thing, Tom said. Before we do this, I want you all to know, his voice caught. I came to this convent to die. I thought death was all I deserved. But you, all of you, you showed me something different. You showed me that even at the end, there's still time to do good, still time to make amends. He looked at Josie. Thank you for giving a dying man something to live for. The sisters wept. Father Miguel offered a blessing. Sam Crow clasped Tom's arm in a warrior's farewell. And Josie, who had spent 18 years in silence, found something new in her teardart. Not words, she would never have those back. But voice, purpose, something worth speaking for, even if she could never speak, that she had found. She picked up her pen one final time. I am Josephine Tron, and this is my truth. She showed it to no one, simply folded it carefully, tucked it inside her habit close to her heart. Then she turned to face the coming night. The night before the end, Josie did not sleep. She sat at the small desk in her cell writing by candlelight. Not testimony this time, she had already committed every detail of the murder to paper, had given those pages to Father Miguel with instructions to hide them, where Cole would never find them. No, tonight she wrote something else. A letter. To whoever finds this, she began. My name is Josephine Tran. For 18 years I did not speak. I believed silence would keep me safe. I was wrong. Silence is not safety. Silence is a prison we build for ourselves brick by brick until we forget that doors exist, until we forget that we ever had a voice at all. She paused, her pen hovering over the page. Through the window she could see the first pale hint of dawn touching the eastern mountains. Soon Cole would come. Soon everything would be decided. I am writing this because I may not survive the day. But if I die, I want someone to know I was here. I mattered. I chose to speak, even though speaking meant danger. Even though silence would have been easier. Colonel Thomas McAllister taught me that. A dying man who found something worth living for. A soldier who burned villages and spent 14 years trying to forget. He showed me that redemption isn't about erasing the past, it's about using whatever time remains to do good. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. But the truth lives on. Cole Hardin killed Governor James Whitmore and his wife Margaret. I witnessed it. I can prove it. And somewhere in this convent, My full testimony is hidden. Find it. Tell my story. Let my voice be heard even after I'm gone. Because silence is death, and I refuse to die quiet. She signed her name at the bottom, Josephine Tron, and folded the letter carefully. Then she tucked it into her habit next to her heart, where the other letter already rested. The bell began to toll. Not the gentle call to morning prayers, but something urgent, frantic, a warning. Josie grabbed the Colt from her desk she had cleaned and loaded it herself the way Tom had taught her, and ran. The courtyard was chaos. Sisters rushed toward the chapel, habits streaming behind them. Father Miguel was already in the bell tower, pulling the rope with desperate energy. Sam Crow limped toward the rear gate, his wounded arm bound tight against his chest, 3 knives gleaming in his good hand. And Tom stood on the walkway above the main gate, rifle raised, watching the approaching riders. 7 of them, he called down as Josie reached the base of the stairs. Cole, Virgil, and 5 others. They're carrying torches. Josie climbed to join him, her legs burning with the effort. When she reached the top, she saw them dark shapes against the brightening sky spreading out as they approached. They mean to burn us out, Tom said grimly. Can't breach the walls, so they'll set fire to the gates and wait for us to run. What do? We hold as long as we can, buy time. For what Tom didn't answer, they both knew there was no cavalry coming, no rescue, no hope except one they made for themselves. Below, Cole's voice rang out across the morning stillness. Last chance, old man, send out the witness, and I'll let the rest of you live. Tom's response was a rifle shot that kicked up dust 3 feet from Cole's horse. That's your answer, Hardin. You want her, you come and get her. For a moment, nothing moved. The desert held its breath. Then Cole raised his hand and the riders charged. Chapter 16, The Siege. The first torch hit the main gate with a shower of sparks. Tom fired twice, missed, once caught a rider in the shoulder the second time. The man tumbled from his horse screaming. But the damage was done. Flames were already licking up the ancient wood, hungry and growing. They'll have it down in 20 minutes, Tom gasped, lowering the rifle to cough. When he pulled his hand away from his mouth, it was red. Maybe less. More shots cracked from below. Josie peered over the parapet and saw 2 men on foot using the rocks for cover, firing at the walkway to keep the defenders pinned. Sam, Tom shouted, watch the back. They'll try to flank us. A distant acknowledgement from somewhere behind the chapel. Josie reloaded the Winchester while Tom caught his breath, her fingers moving with surprising steadiness. Strange how calm she felt. After 18 years of fear, after a lifetime of running and hiding, there was something almost peaceful about finally standing still, about finally fighting back. You should go to the chapel, Tom said, watching her. With the others. She shook her head, held up the rifle. Stubborn woman. But there was pride in his voice. Fine, but stay low, and if I tell you to run, the gate groaned. A section of wood weakened by flames collapsed inward. Here they come, Tom said. 3 men charged through the burning gap, guns blazing. Tom dropped the first with a shot to the leg. Josie tracked the second, remembered Tom's lessons, breathed steady, squeezed, and fired. The kick nearly knocked her off her feet. The bullet went wide, sparking off adobe somewhere to the left. But the shot forced the man to dive for cover, buying precious seconds. The third man made it through. He was heading for the stairs. I've got him, Tom said. Watch the gate. He descended, moving faster than a dying man should be able to move, the rifle clutched in hands that had held weapons for 40 years. Josie turned back to the gate. Through the smoke and flames, she could see more shapes approaching. Cole was directing them, staying back, letting his hired guns take the risks. Cowards, she thought. You killed your own father and brother, but you won't face the consequences yourself. A shout from below, the clash of bodies, then a gunshot close and sharp. Josie's heart seized. She risked a glance over her shoulder. Tom stood at the base of the stairs, the third attacker crumpled at his feet. But Tom was swaying, one hand pressed to his side. Even from this distance, she could see the dark stains spreading across his shirt. He looked up, met her eyes. I'm fine, he called, though he clearly wasn't. Just a scratch. Keep watching that gate. She turned back, her throat tight, her eyes burning with something that wasn't smoke. Hold on. She prayed to God, to the universe, to whoever might be listening. Just hold on a little longer. The battle lasted an hour. Later, Josie would remember it in fragments, the roar of flames consuming the gate, the crack of rifles and the whistle of bullets. Sam Crow's war cry from somewhere behind the chapel, followed by a scream that meant another enemy had met his knives. Mother Superior emerging from the main building with her iron skillet, cracking it across the skull of a man who had somehow scaled the wall. And through it all, Tom McAllister holding the line. He fought like a man already dead, which in a way he was. Every shot cost him. Every movement drained what little strength he had left. But he kept firing, kept moving, kept placing himself between the attackers and the chapel where the sisters had taken shelter. By the time the sun was fully up, 4 of Cole's men were down. 2 dead, 2 wounded badly enough to be out of the fight. But Sam was hurt. A bullet had caught him in the side, and Sister Agnes had dragged him into the infirmary. And Tom was dying. Not from the cancer, though, that was killing him too. A bullet had found his chest during the final push, lodging somewhere near his lung. He sat slumped against the chapel wall, his rifle across his knees, blood bubbling at his lips with every breath. Josie knelt beside him, pressing her hands against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding, even though they both knew it was futile. Virgil, Tom managed. Where's Virgil? She shook her head. In the chaos of the battle, she had lost track of the scarred man. Find him, he's the dangerous one. Cole's just... A cough interrupted him, wet and terrible. Cole's just greed. Virgil's the killer. I won't leave you. You have to. Tom's hand found hers, squeezed with surprising strength. I'm done, Josie. I've been done for weeks, but you... He met her eyes, and in his gaze, she saw something she had never seen directed at her before: faith. Complete, unwavering faith. You can still finish this. You can still speak. I can't, you can. He pressed something into her hand, the Colt still warm from use. Not with words, with this. He tapped the gun, and with this. He touched her chest over her heart. The truth is your weapon. Use it. Footsteps behind her. She spun. Virgil stood at the edge of the courtyard, his scarred face twisted with rage, his pistol leveled at her head. Get away from him, Virgil snarled, slowly. Josie rose. The Colt hung at her side, hidden in the folds of her habit. You killed my men, Virgil continued, advancing. You and this dying fool in a convent full of nuns, he spat. Do you know how many people I've killed, how many towns I've burned, and now I'm supposed to be afraid of you? Behind him, she saw Tom struggling to rise, failing, his hand reaching for the rifle that had fallen just out of reach. Keep him talking, Josie thought. Buy time. She pulled out her paper, wrote with one hand, the other still gripping the Colt. Your brother shot Emmett. Did you know that? Virgil's eyes flickered to the paper, then back to her face. What? Emmett, the youngest. Cole shot him last night. His own brother. You're lying. Am I? Ask Cole. Ask him what happened when Emmett tried to let me go. Something shifted in Virgil's expression. Doubt. Uncertainty. Emmett was weak, he said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. Always was. If Cole... Behind him, Tom had finally reached the rifle. He raised it with shaking arms. Virgil heard the motion. Spun. Tom fired. The shot went wide. His arms were too weak, his aim too unsteady. But it was enough. Virgil's attention was split for just a moment, just long enough for Josie to act. She didn't think, didn't plan. She just moved. She slammed into Virgil from the side, driving her shoulder into his ribs with all the strength she had. They went down together, tumbling across the hard-packed earth. His gun went flying, so did hers. Virgil was bigger, stronger, faster. She waited for the horror to come, the guilt, the crushing weight of having taken a life. Instead, she felt nothing, just a vast, empty calm. And beneath it, something that might have been relief. He would have killed everyone. The sisters, Tom, me. He would have killed us all. I stopped him. I spoke. Chapter 17, Truth as Weapon. She found Cole in the chapel. He stood before the altar, a torch in one hand and a pistol in the other. The stained glass windows cast colored shadows across his face, red and gold and deepest blue, making him look like something from a fever dream. I knew you'd come, he said without turning. You survivors always do. You can't help yourselves. Josie stepped through the doorway, the empty Colt still clutched in her hand. Her habit was torn, her face smudged with smoke and blood, but she walked with her back straight and her head high. She had spent 18 years hiding. 18 years disappearing. Not anymore. Virgil's dead, Cole continued. He turned to face her, and she saw something unexpected in his eyes. Exhaustion. Defeat. The look of a man who had gambled everything and lost. My men are dead or scattered. My brother, his voice caught. My brother tried to betray me, so I shot him. My own blood. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Do you know what the worst part is? Father was going to acknowledge me anyway. He called me to his house that night to tell me the announcement was written. Everything I wanted handed to me on a silver platter. The torch flickered in his grip, and I killed him for it. Josie wrote quickly, held up the paper. You didn't have to. You chose to. I chose. Cole's eyes blazed. I spent 30 years being his dirty secret. 30 years watching him play loving husband, devoted father, while I grew up in a shack outside of town, knowing my own father was ashamed of my existence. He stepped closer. You think I had a choice? You think any of this was a choice? We always have a choice. Easy for you to say. You've never been thrown away like garbage. Never been told you're worth less than nothing. Josie lowered the paper, looked him straight in the eye. Then she wrote slowly and deliberately, I watched my parents murdered when I was 16. I hid under the floor and listened to them die. I didn't speak for 18 years because my father's last words were, don't make a sound. You think you know about being thrown away? About being told you're nothing? She held up another sheet. I know, I've lived it, but I didn't become a murderer. I didn't kill the people who hurt me. I found another way. Cole stared at her words for a long moment. Something flickered in his expression. Pain, perhaps. Recognition. Then it hardened. You think you are better than me, he said. You think your silence what makes you noble. But you're just a coward who was too scared to act. At least I did something. At least I took control. You killed your father. You killed your brother. You killed innocent people. She wrote faster now, the words pouring out of her like water from a broken dam. That's not control, that's fear. You were so afraid of being rejected, of being forgotten, that you destroyed everyone who could hurt you. But it didn't work, did it? You're still afraid. You'll always be afraid because the thing you're running from isn't out there, it's in here. She pressed a hand to her own chest. I know. I ran from it too. For 18 years. But you can't outrun yourself, Cole. You can only face what you've done and try to make it right. Cole's hand was shaking now. The torch wavered, casting wild shadows across the chapel walls. Make it right, he repeated. And how am I supposed to do that? My father's dead. My brother's dead. Everything is, his voice broke. Everything is gone. Then testify, tell the truth. Accept whatever punishment comes. It won't bring them back, but it won't do anything. Cole raised his pistol, aimed it at her head. You think a confession will make this better? You think saying sorry will undo what I've done? Josie didn't flinch, didn't run, didn't hide. She simply wrote one more line and held it up. No, but it's a start. For a long moment, nobody moved. The torch crackled. Dust motes danced in the colored light. Outside, the distant sound of hoofbeats echoed across the desert, many hoofbeats approaching fast. Cole heard them too. His head turned toward the chapel doors, and Josie saw something shift in his expression. Reinforcements, he asked almost hopefully. Did Virgil? Cole hardened. The voice came from outside. Loud, commanding, official. This is Deputy Marshal Henry Shaw. The convent is surrounded by federal officers. Drop your weapons and come out with your hands raised. Cole's face went white. Shaw's dead, he whispered. I saw the body. I saw. The chapel doors burst open. Marshal Shaw stood in the entrance, very much alive, flanked by 6 men in federal uniforms with rifles trained on Cole's chest. Behind them, Josie could see more men fanning out across the courtyard, securing the convent. Drop the weapon, Harden, Shaw said. It's over. Cole looked at the marshals, at Josie, at the torch still burning in his hand. For one terrible moment, Josie thought he would set fire to the chapel anyway, would burn them all rather than face justice. Then the pistol clattered to the floor. The torch followed hissing as it hit the stone. Cole Harden sank to his knees, and 18 years of silence finally came to an end. Chapter 18, Redemption. They found Tom still propped against the chapel wall, his eyes half closed, his breathing shallow and wet. Josie pushed through the marshals, ignoring their questions, their demands for explanation. She dropped to her knees beside him, taking his cold hand in hers. Tom, Tom, we did it. Shaw's alive. The marshals are here. Cole's. I know. His voice was barely a whisper, but his eyes opened, those sharp, seeing eyes that had recognized her from the very first day. I heard the commotion. A ghost of a smile crossed his lips. Guess the old cavalry trick worked after all. She frowned. What trick? Shaw told me, before he left that night. Cavalry smoke signals. He said if anything went wrong, he'd send up smoke before they got him. There's a garrison 20 miles east. They'd see it, come to investigate. Tom coughed, grimaced. I didn't want to tell you, didn't want to give you false hope if it didn't work. It worked. She squeezed his hand. It worked, Tom. Help is here. You're going to be no. The word was gentle but firm. No, Josie, I'm not. Sister Agnes appeared beside them, her face grave. She took one look at Tom's wound and shook her head. The bullet's in his lung. There's nothing I can do. Then we get him to a real doctor. But even as Josie wrote the words, she knew it was hopeless. Santa Fe was hours away. Tom didn't have hours. Tom's hand tightened on hers. Don't, he said. Don't grieve for me. This is better than I deserved. His eyes found hers, held them. I came here to die alone, hating myself for what I'd done. You gave me something else. Something I never expected. What purpose? Meaning. A chance to save instead of destroy. He smiled, and despite the blood on his lips, it was the most peaceful expression she had ever seen on his face. You gave me redemption, Josie. You showed me that even at the end, even after everything I'd done, there was still something good I could do. Tears streamed down her face. She didn't try to stop them. You saved me, she wrote. You showed me I was worth fighting for. You taught me to speak again. You always had the voice. I just helped you find it. His breath was coming in shorter gasps now. Promise me something. Anything. Don't go silent again. Don't let the fear win. Keep speaking. Keep writing. Keep being seen. He reached up, touched her face with fingers that were growing cold. The world needs your truth, Josephine Tran. Don't let anyone take it from you again. I promise. Good. His hand fell away. His eyes drifted closed. Good. His breathing slowed, then stopped. Josie sat with him for a long time, holding his hand, letting the tears fall. Around her, the marshals moved through the convent, tending to the wounded, documenting the scene. Mother Superior and the sisters emerged from hiding, their voices raised in prayers of thanksgiving and grief. But Josie stayed where she was, beside the man who had given her back her voice. When she finally rose, the sun was high in the sky. She walked to where Marshal Shaw was conferring with his men and tapped him on the shoulder. He turned. Miss Tran, I want to thank you. She held up her paper. Emmett Hardin is wounded somewhere in the desert. Cole shot him last night. He wanted to help me. He can testify to everything. Shaw's eyes widened. Cole shot his own brother. She nodded. Where? Their camp, a mile northwest. He was alive when I left. Shaw turned to his men. Martinez, take 3 riders and find him. If he's still breathing, get him to a doctor. As the marshals rode off, Shaw turned back to Josie. There'll be a trial. We'll need your testimony written, I understand. But with Emmett's corroboration and your documented account, Cole Hardin will hang for what he did. Josie nodded. She knew. Is there anything else you need right now? Anything I can do? She thought for a moment, then she wrote, There's a man who died defending this convent. A colonel. He deserves to be buried with honors. Shaw glanced toward where Tom's body lay, covered now with a white sheet. Consider it done. Chapter 19, The New Voice, 6 months later, spring 1879. The grave sat on a small hill overlooking the convent, marked by a simple stone cross and a weathered wooden marker. Josie had carved the words herself, Thomas McAllister, 1817 to 1878. He found his voice at the end. She knelt in the new grass, arranging a small bouquet of wildflowers against the stone. The desert was blooming after the spring rains, lupines and poppies, an Indian paintbrush, a riot of color where only brown had been before. They hanged Cole last month, she said, wrote rather, though she had gotten so used to the motion that the distinction barely mattered anymore. Emmett testified against him, told the court everything. He got 10 years for his part in it, but the judge said he'd consider early release if he behaved. She paused, looking out at the mountains. Virgil died from his wounds. The others scattered. The governor's legitimate family contested the will, of course. I don't know how that will turn out. I don't particularly care. A breeze stirred her habit, carrying the scent of sage and something sweeter. Mother Superior says I've changed. She says I walk differently now. Hold my head higher. She says the other sisters have noticed too. They come to me now when they need someone to listen. Turns out silence can be a gift if you use it right. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of attention, of presence, of really hearing what someone needs to say. She touched the wooden cross. You taught me that, among other things. Footsteps behind her. She turned. A young woman stood at the edge of the hill, perhaps 19 or 20, with fair hair and familiar eyes. Tom's eyes. Sister Josephine, the woman asked. I'm Martha McAllister. Thomas was my brother. Josie rose, brushing grass from her habit. Martha approached her gaze, moving to the grave. I got his letter. The last one he wrote before. She swallowed. He talked about you. Said you'd given him something he thought he'd lost forever. She held out a folded paper. He asked me to give this to you, if anything happened. Josie took it with trembling hands, unfolded it. Sister Josephine, the letter read in Tom's cramped, decisive handwriting. If you're reading this, I'm gone. Don't waste time feeling sorry for me. I've had more life than I deserved, and the last few weeks were the best of it. I want you to know something. When I met you, I thought I was past redemption. I thought the things I'd done had marked me forever, had made me into something beyond saving. You showed me I was wrong, not by absolving me, not by telling me it was okay or that I should forgive myself, but by being brave when I was weak, by speaking when you had every reason to stay silent, by fighting for the truth even when the truth was dangerous. You taught me that it's never too late, that even at the end, even after everything, there's still time to do good. Still time to matter. So here's my last order for one, to keep mattering, keep speaking, keep being the voice for those who can't speak for themselves. The world needs witnesses. The world needs people like you. It was an honor to know you, Josephine Tron. Even if we only had a few days. Your friend, Tom Josie, read the letter twice. Then she folded it carefully and tucked it into her habit next to her heart. Thank you, she wrote to Martha, for bringing this, for coming. Thank you for being there when he needed someone. Martha's eyes were bright with tears. He spent his whole life carrying guilt. You helped him set it down. They stood together in silence for a long moment, two women bound by a man who had saved them both, one by blood, one by belief. Then Martha left, and Josie was alone with the grave and the flowers and the endless desert sky. She made her way back to the convent as the sun began its descent toward the mountains. The gates had been rebuilt stronger, now reinforced with iron, but they stood open, welcoming. In the herb garden, two young novices were working among the plants. One of them looked up as Josie approached. Sister Josephine, we were hoping to find you. Sister Agnes says the foxglove needs harvesting, but we're not sure which leaves to take. Could you show us? Josie smiled, pulled out her paper. Of course, come, I'll teach you. She led them into the garden, pointing out which plants were ready, which needed more time, which should never be touched without gloves. The novices asked questions, and she answered, writing quickly, efficiently, her pen moving across the paper like a voice freed from 18 years of imprisonment. She had not regained her speech. The doctor said she probably never would. The trauma had carved too deep, changed something fundamental in the connection between mind and voice. But she had found another way. She wrote letters now, dozens of them, to patients in the infirmary offering comfort, to families of the dead offering witness, to lawmakers and journalists offering testimony about what she had seen, what she had survived, what she had learned. She had become the convent's chronicler, recording its history for generations yet to come. Mother Superior said her writings would outlast them all. And every evening as the sun set and the bells called the faithful to vespers, Josie walked to the small hill overlooking the convent and stood before Tom's grave. She didn't write anything on those visits. Didn't need to. Some silences she had learned were not prisons. Some silences were conversations. The desert stretched to the horizon, vast and ancient and indifferent to the small dramas of human lives. The Sangre de Cristo Mountains caught the last light of day, their peaks blazing gold and crimson. And in the convent of San Miguel, a woman who had been silent for 18 years sat at her desk, pen in hand, and wrote, "My name is Josephine Tron. I am a witness. For most of my life, I believed that silence was safety, that if I made myself small enough, quiet enough, invisible enough, the world would pass me by without causing harm. I was wrong. The truth is, silence doesn't protect us. It only makes us easier to ignore, easier to hurt, easier to forget. The truth is we all have a voice, whether we speak with our mouths or our hands or our pens. The question is not whether we can speak, but whether we have the courage to. I found that courage in the most unlikely place in a dying man who had spent his whole life running from his past. He taught me that it's never too late to change, never too late to matter, never too late to speak the truth no matter the cost. So I speak now, not for myself, but for all those who cannot, for the murdered and the forgotten, for the victims whose stories died with them, for everyone who ever believed their voice didn't matter. Your voice matters. Your truth matters. You matter. And as long as I have breath in my body and a pen in my hand, I will never be silent again." She signed her name at the bottom of the page, set down her pen. Outside, the stars were emerging one by one in the deepening purple sky. The convent bell tolled the hour, its voice carrying across the desert like a prayer. Josie listened to it for a long moment. Then she rose from her desk, tucked her latest letter into the stack waiting to be sent, and walked out into the evening air. She passed the chapel where the sisters were gathering for vespers. She passed the herb garden fragrant with sage and lavender. She passed the gate still open, still welcoming. And she climbed the small hill to Tom's grave where she stood, as she did every evening, watching the last light fade from the mountains. She did not speak, did not write. She simply stood and remembered and breathed, a witness to the end and to the beginning.